We are KB and Jasmine, and welcome to Beyond the Silver Screen.
Welcome to our deep dive into the films of Ingmar Bergman.
Oh, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, you've sent over some really fascinating material.
Yeah.
And I'm, really excited to kind of unpack it all with you.
Yeah.
These recurring themes and visual motifs that make Bergman's work so captivating. We're going to explore, this idea of a geography of the soul, the recurring motif of turning,
Right.
and, just how Bergman kind of tackles some of these big, big questions about life, about existence,
Yeah, absolutely.
against the backdrop of, often like an impending apocalypse.
Yeah, and it's like he doesn't just present those like as abstract concepts, right?
Right.
He really brings them to life through these incredible, like, vivid images and
Yeah.
these really powerful, like, character dynamics.
Yeah, it's interesting. So before we get lost in this, geography of the soul,
Okay.
let's start with the basics. Bergman often sets his films against this looming sense of like societal collapse or an impending apocalypse, which is heavy stuff. But
It is, yeah.
what's the significance of that backdrop? Like, why is that such a recurring element in his work?
Oh, well, I don't think it's necessarily about the literal end of the world.
Okay.
It's more that he's using like this looming threat to kind of strip away
Mm-hmm.
all those superficial layers of human existence
Yeah.
and kind of force his characters and us as viewers to confront those like rawest, the rawest questions when everything is falling apart, you know?
Right.
What truly matters? What gives life meaning
Mm-hmm.
in the face of oblivion?
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. And it makes me think about the geography of the soul
Yeah.
that you mentioned. So how does this landscape, this map of human existence, play into these questions of meaning and mercy?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
Bergman kind of envisions the world not just as like a physical space, right?
Right.
But also as this landscape of different like states of being. Each individual occupies a certain location on this map. Some residing in these like darker corners, others in brighter, more hopeful spaces. And all of these locations, these states of being, they're all like interconnected.
Oh, that's interesting.
His characters are constantly like navigating this terrain, moving from like isolation to connection,
Mm-hmm.
from despair to these like fleeting moments of hope.
So instead of just physical locations, we're talking about like emotional or spiritual states.
Exactly.
Exactly. That makes sense. Could you give me a concrete example of how this geography of the soul manifests in one of his films?
Sure. Take a film like The Silence, for example.
Okay.
Two sisters confined to a hotel room in a foreign city, seemingly, on the brink of war.
Right.
Now, the physical space is incredibly claustrophobic, but the film is really about that emotional distance between the sisters, each trapped in their own internal world of isolation and longing. That isolation, that inability to like truly connect, that's like a key landmark in Bergman's geography of the soul.
It's like the external world mirroring the internal struggles of the characters.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this feeling of isolation, of
Yeah.
being cut off from genuine connection,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be a recurring theme in his work.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that Bergman sees abandonment as a kind of first death. What did you mean by that?
Well, he argued that true despair, it doesn't come from physical death itself, but from this like profound sense of being abandoned, betrayed, left, utterly alone. And this abandonment, it can manifest in different ways. The loss of faith, the breakdown of relationships, even a sense of being abandoned by like society as a whole.
Right, like just completely cut off and alone.
Yeah, and it shatters our sense of security and
Yeah.
just throws us into this existential crisis.
Yeah, and that I can see how that ties into his use of these apocalyptic settings.
Yeah.
When the world itself is falling apart,
Right.
that sense of abandonment is just magnified.
Exactly.
It's like being abandoned by existence itself.
Yes, and how characters respond to this feeling of abandonment becomes like central to their journey within this geography of the soul, right? Some might react with rage, others seek distractions, and some even try to create a sense of like self-sufficiency in the face of utter isolation.
Just trying to build their own world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And this brings us to another recurring motif. You mentioned this act of turning.
Yes.
You said it's a visual metaphor that embodies this tension between connection and isolation.
Right.
Could you unpack that a bit more?
Well, imagine, two faces close together,
Thing.
yet they're looking in opposite directions. that simple image kind of encapsulates the central struggle in many of Bergman's films.
Yeah.
You know, we crave connection, we yearn for intimacy, but at the same time, we're afraid of vulnerability. We're afraid of getting hurt. So we turn away, seeking refuge in isolation, even as we long to reach out.
It's that push and pull, right?
Exactly.
I think everyone can relate to that feeling. Being caught in this constant push and pull between needing others and fearing the potential pain that comes with intimacy.
Right. It's that sort of primal fear.
Right.
But it's not just about romantic relationships.
No, it's bigger than that.
It plays out in families, friendships, even in our relationship with the wider world.
The world in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do we turn towards the complexities of life?
Right.
Embrace the messiness, or do we shield ourselves, turn inwards,
Right.
and seek comfort in solitude?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that tension is at the heart of many of Bergman's most powerful scenes.
It is.
I would say.
Yeah.
So we have this apocalyptic backdrop,
Right.
the landscape of the soul, where characters are navigating isolation and connection.
Yeah.
And this constant tension between turning towards and away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's already painting a pretty complex picture.
It is.
Where do themes of shame and humiliation
Right.
kind of fit into all of this?
Well, Bergman, he doesn't shy away from exploring these darker emotions.
He does.
He sees shame and humiliation as intertwined with our actions and even our perception of ourselves.
Right.
In a way, they become landmarks in his geography of the soul,
Okay.
defining the locations some characters inhabit.
It reminds me of Shame, the film Shame.
Yes.
Which is set in a world ravaged by war. And the characters are literally surrounded by shame.
Right.
The shame of a collapsed society, the shame of their own actions in the midst of this chaos.
Yeah, and it's not just about individual actions either.
Right.
Bergman taps into this deeper anxiety, the fear that existence itself might be inherently shameful, even humiliating, That sense of being fundamentally flawed permeates so many of his films.
It's not a lighthearted topic,
No.
but it's incredibly thought-provoking.
Yeah, and I think it's that honesty, that willingness to delve into the darker corners of human experience that makes his films so compelling, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He confronts those uncomfortable truths
Yes.
about ourselves, about the human condition,
Yeah.
in a way that few other filmmakers dare to do.
I think so, yeah.
But, it's not all darkness and despair, right?
No, of course not.
Even in these bleak landscapes, Bergman offers these fleeting moments of hope and connection.
You're right, he doesn't leave us completely stranded in the darkness,
No.
Even in the midst of those desolate, emotional landscapes, there are these glimmers of light, a shared meal, a dance,
Yeah.
a tender embrace. These small acts of love and compassion offer a sense of redemption, reminding us that even in a world on the brink, human connection can still offer a flicker of hope.
It's like finding a tiny wildflower growing in the cracks of a crumbling building.
Yeah, I love that image.
It makes you appreciate the resilience
Yeah.
of beauty of human connection,
Yeah.
In the face of such bleakness.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And, speaking of contrast, I think it's time we delved into Bergman's use of the circus in The Clown's Evening.
Yeah.
It becomes this fascinating microcosm of life itself.
Okay.
Where he juxtaposes the drudgery and humiliation with these moments of pure exhilaration and beauty.
That sounds like a fascinating layer to add to this exploration.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the world of clowns and circuses,
Okay.
we'll need to take a quick break.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into the world of Ingmar Bergman. We were just discussing those contrasting elements, of hope and despair in Bergman's films. And you mentioned the circus in The Clown's Evening as this microcosm of life. So what is it about the circus that makes it such a compelling setting for Bergman to kind of explore these themes?
Well, the circus, with its spectacle and performance, it offers a unique lens through which to examine those raw, almost primal aspects of human nature.
Okay.
Bergman peels back the curtain, so to speak, and reveals that vulnerability beneath the performance, the human cost of creating that illusion of joy and wonder.
So it's not just about the clowns and acrobats. It's about the people behind the masks, their relationships, their struggles.
Right.
Their very human desires and disappointments. It
Yeah.
reminds me of those contrasting elements you mentioned before.
Yeah.
The laughter and the cruelty,
Mm-hmm.
the entertainment and the exploitation.
Exactly, yeah. Think about like the inherent duality of the circus.
Okay.
On one level, it's pure entertainment.
Right.
It's escapism, it's like awe-inspiring feats of skill and daring.
Right.
But there's this like underlying current of sadness, this constant struggle for survival,
Right.
the exploitation that often goes hand in hand with like spectacle.
It's like he's saying that even in a world designed to create illusions, there's no escaping those complexities of human existence.
100%.
That tension between the desire for escape and the harsh realities of life. It plays out so vividly in the circus setting.
And that tension, it ties back into the idea of like Bergman's geography of the soul, doesn't it?
Right.
Those characters in The Clown's Evening, they're drawn to the freedom and like the exhilaration of the circus life, but they're also trapped by its demands. This constant cycle of like performance and travel. They're searching for connection, for meaning, but they're constantly confronted with those like limitations of human relationships. Right. Fragility of their own existence.
It's like that feeling of being stuck, of not being able to escape those darker corners of that internal landscape, no matter where you go.
Exactly.
Even the clowns who are supposed to make us laugh are carrying this weight of sadness, this awareness of life's fragility.
Bergman, he doesn't allow us to just simply laugh at the clowns or marvel at the acrobats. He forces us to like confront the darkness that lurks beneath the surface. And the clown figures in particular become like symbolic of that fine line between laughter and cruelty, between entertainment and the exploitation of human vulnerability.
It's a stark reminder that even in those moments of lightness and amusement, there's always this undercurrent of melancholy, this awareness of the, darker aspects of human nature.
And that brings us to another, I think, crucial aspect of Bergman's work. His exploration of love.
Particularly in a film like Smiles of a Summer Night, where he delves into the complexities of romantic love, the illusions of passion, and the possibility of finding like deeper connection over time.
I'm curious to hear more about that. It seems like a departure from some of the heavier themes we've been discussing.
Yeah, it's definitely a lighter film. Is Smiles of a Summer Night a more optimistic film?
Yeah.
It's certainly more playful, I think, with a lighter touch than some of his other works. But even in this romantic comedy, Bergman grapples with those like profound questions about the nature of love and desire. He explores the different stages of love, the fleeting nature of passion, the disappointments that like inevitably arise in human relationships.
So even in a film about love, Bergman doesn't shy away from the complexities, the potential for heartbreak, the challenges of sustaining connection over time. It's very real in that sense.
But there's still a sense of hope, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely.
Like this longing for lasting connection, even if it's elusive.
Smiles of a Summer Night is this like delicate dance between hope and disillusionment. You know, the characters, they're yearning for fulfillment, but they're also grappling with the limitations of like human relationships. The realization that love doesn't always conquer all.
It doesn't always have a fairy tale ending.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting how Bergman uses the setting of like a Swedish summer night to heighten those emotions, that sense of longing and desire. You know, the long twilight hours, the magical atmosphere. It's like a backdrop for like dreams and illusions, for the possibility of something extraordinary happening.
You've hit on, I think, like a key element of the film. Bergman uses that setting to create this sense of like heightened reality where emotions are amplified and the boundaries between like dreams and reality, they become blurred. It's a world of enchantment, but it's also a world where the characters are forced to confront their own illusions about love and happiness.
And even though the film was made decades ago, those questions about, you know, what makes love last, what creates true connection, they still resonate
They do.
so deeply today.
Absolutely. We're all still searching for those same answers.
Yeah, we are. And Bergman, as always, is more interested in
Yeah.
asking the difficult questions
Right.
than providing easy solutions.
He shows us that love can be both
Yeah.
the source of immense joy and profound sorrow.
Right.
It can bring us together,
Yeah.
but it can also tear us apart.
It's that honesty, that
Yeah.
refusal to sugarcoat the
Yeah.
complexities of human relationships
Yeah.
that makes his work so enduring, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's not just about romantic love either.
Okay.
Bergman, he explores that full spectrum of human connection, the bonds of family,
Right.
the complexities of friendship, the fleeting moments of connection we experience with
Right.
strangers.
Just those moments where you connect with someone.
Yeah, and interwoven with these themes of love and connection is this
Right.
ever-present awareness of time's passage, the finite nature of
Right.
human existence.
Yeah, that sense of urgency of time slipping away, it permeates so much of his work.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we choose to spend the time we have
Right.
and how those choices shape our lives,
Right.
our relationships.
Our legacies.
And that awareness of mortality connects to, I think, a
Yeah.
broader anxiety that Bergman explores in his films,
Yeah.
particularly in Shame
Right.
and the entire trilogy, this growing unease about the modern world,
Yeah.
the feeling of being trapped in a system.
Yeah, beyond our control.
That's a fascinating transition.
Yeah.
It seems like we're moving from the personal to
Right.
the political,
Yeah.
from individual struggles to
Yeah.
a broader societal unease.
Right. Exactly.
How does Bergman kind of depict
Well, he uses these
the shift in his films?
stark almost, apocalyptic visuals.
Okay.
Desolate landscapes, bombed out cities,
Right.
the constant presence of military forces and these images. They reflect the anxieties of the time,
Yeah.
the Cold War, the threat of nuclear annihilation,
Right.
the feeling that humanity was on the brink of
Right.
self-destruction.
So his characters are not just grappling with their own personal demons, but also with this sense that the world itself is
Exactly.
collapsing around them. So we've got love, death, the passage of time, and this growing sense of unease about the modern world.
Yeah.
It's a pretty heavy load to carry,
Yeah.
but Bergman seems to weave it all together seamlessly.
He does.
What's the thread that connects all of these themes? What's the message he's trying to convey
Right.
through all of this?
Well, I think at its core, Bergman's work is about this search for meaning in a world that often seems meaningless.
Right.
His characters, they're constantly grappling with loss, with betrayal,
With
with the fragility of human connection. And yet they keep searching for those fleeting moments of grace, those glimmers of hope that make life worth living.
Yeah.
It's an existential struggle that resonates deeply with
I think so.
audiences, regardless of the time or place.
It makes me think about how Bergman portrays himself as a storyteller. In Fanny and Alexander,
Right.
he seems acutely aware of the power of narratives
Yeah, that's a great
to shape our understanding of the world,
Right.
both for good and for ill.
Bergman understands that stories, they can offer solace, that they can help us make sense of chaos and find meaning in the face of suffering. But he also recognizes that potential danger of stories, how they can be used to manipulate, to control,
Right.
to create illusions that distract us from
Right, from the truth.
truth.
So as viewers, we need to be aware of the stories we're being told,
Right.
the narratives that shape our perceptions of the world. And as individuals, we need to be mindful of the stories we tell ourselves, the narratives that define our lives.
Precisely.
And Bergman, as this master storyteller,
Yeah.
is constantly playing with this tension,
Yeah.
challenging us to question the narratives we create and consume.
Right.
He's asking us to look beyond the surface, to delve into the complexities of human experience,
Yeah.
and to find our own meaning amidst the
Yeah.
chaos and uncertainty of life.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And I think it's one of the reasons his films continue to resonate with
Yeah.
audiences today.
I think so.
You know?
They challenge us to confront these existential questions in a way that feels both timeless
Yeah.
and deeply personal.
Absolutely.
Throughout this deep dive, I've been thinking about, like, what resonates most with me in Bergman's work. And I keep coming back to that honesty, that willingness to explore the messiness of human experience without judgment or sentimentality.
He's not afraid to show us the ugliness alongside the beauty, the despair alongside the hope.
And it's that, like, unflinching gaze. That willingness to confront the darkest corners of the human psyche that makes his films so powerful and ultimately so hopeful.
I agree.
He's not offering easy answers or simplistic solutions.
No.
He's simply holding up a mirror to ourselves, forcing us to acknowledge the complexity of our own nature, the beauty and the darkness that coexists within us all.
Beautifully said.
It's like he's saying that even in the midst of despair, even in the face of our own flaws and failures, there's still a possibility for connection, for redemption, for finding meaning in the journey itself.
That's a perfect note to end on for part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll be back shortly.
Sounds good.
To wrap things up and offer some final thoughts on the enduring legacy of Ingmar Bergman.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the films of Ingmar Bergman. We've covered so much ground already. For the geography of the soul, the complexities of love, and the anxieties of the modern world. As we kind of wrap things up here, what are some key takeaways you hope listeners will carry with them from our conversation?
I think Bergman's films, at their heart, are really a testament to the power of questions. He doesn't offer those easy answers, but he compels us to confront these fundamental mysteries of human existence. He asks, what's the nature of love? How do we face the inevitability of death? Where do we find meaning in a world that can often feel meaningless? These are questions that resonate across generations, and Bergman's exploration of them, I think, continues to provoke and inspire.
So it's not about finding those definitive answers. It's more about embracing that journey of exploration, of grappling with these profound questions.
Exactly. Bergman's characters, they're constantly searching, questioning, wrestling with doubt and uncertainty. And it's through that very struggle, that process of confronting those uncomfortable truths, that they discover, moments of grace, connection, fleeting beauty. It's in that questioning, in the seeking, that they find glimpses of meaning.
It reminds me of the image you described earlier, the two faces close together but looking in opposite directions. It's such a powerful visual representation of that inner tension we all experience. That push and pull between our desire for connection and our fear of vulnerability.
It's the human condition in a nutshell. We yearn for intimacy, for belonging, but we also fear rejection, pain, the potential for loss. And Bergman captures that duality so brilliantly in his films. He doesn't shy away from the complexities of human relationships. He shows us the beauty and the ugliness. The joy and the sorrow, the light and darkness that coexist within us all.
And that's what makes his work so enduring, isn't it?
I think so.
That honesty, that unflinching gaze at the human condition. Bergman's films, they challenge us to look inward, to confront our own vulnerabilities and desires, and to find our own way through the labyrinth of human existence.
He's a master at revealing the layers beneath the surface of peeling back the facades we present to the world and exposing those raw, vulnerable human beings beneath. And he does it with such empathy and compassion. He doesn't judge his characters. He simply observes them with all their flaws and contradictions and invites us to do the same.
So for someone who's never seen a Bergman film, where would you suggest they start? What's the gateway drug, so to speak, into this incredible world?
That's a tough one. There are so many masterpieces to choose from. But if I had to pick just one, I might recommend Wild Strawberries. It's a beautiful and moving film that explores themes of memory, regret, and the possibility of redemption. It follows an aging professor on this journey, both literal and metaphorical, as he confronts his past and searches for meaning in the twilight of his life.
It's a great starting point.
It is.
And once you've experienced the magic of Wild Strawberries, you'll be hooked. There's no turning back.
I couldn't agree more. Bergman's films are a gift. They're a challenge, an invitation to delve deeper into those mysteries of human experience. They might not always be easy to watch, but they offer profound rewards for those willing to take the journey.
And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Bergman's films often explore the idea of finding meaning and mercy in a world filled with darkness and uncertainty. So I ask you, dear listener, where do you find those glimpses of hope and connection in your own life? What sustains you in the face of the unknown?
That's a beautiful question to ponder and a fitting way to end our exploration of Bergman's world. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll continue to explore the films of this extraordinary artist and discover the profound truths they hold.
Thanks for listening.